The Hilltop Glove Podcast is sponsored by Mid-Carolina Service Company.
Mid-Carolina Service Company is the first name to search for your residential or commercial HVAC needs in Lexington and surrounding areas.
Just go holler at Jason and Clint. They'll hook you up on the air conditioners, on the restaurant equipment, refrigerators, refrigeration, ice machine repair. They've been doing this for years. I know them cats forever.
Family owned and operated since 2006, they pride themselves in their quality work and customer relationships. Call 803-356-4153 or visit midcarolinaserviceco.com for a no obligation quote for service today.
The Hilltop Glove Podcast is sponsored by True Brilliance Entertainment.
True Brilliance is a production, promotions, and management company dedicated to connecting artists and producers across the Carolinas to music industry professionals.
Several of their clients have placements both domestic and internationally as a result of their services.
Are you an artist or producer looking to build meaningful relationships within the music industry? Then True Brilliance is for you. Check them out at paramilitary.com. That's spelled P-A-I-R-A military.com.
This episode of the Hilltop Glove Podcast is sponsored by Bob's. Bob's is a Columbia-based retailer of over 100 Black-owned products from 20 Black-owned businesses. Bob's offers a wide range of items from household cleaning, cosmetics, and everything in between. With every visit to Bob's, you support Black-owned businesses, giving them the opportunity to grow and establish connections with our community. Bob's is located inside the Noma warehouse at 2222 Sumter Street in Columbia, South Carolina. Visit their website, weshopbobs.com for in-store pickup or to find out more. Bob's can also be found via social media on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at weshopbobs. When you stop by, tell them the Hilltop Glove sent you. Bob's brings quality Black brands to the Columbia community. The Hilltop Glove Podcast is sponsored by Red Rooster Sports Bar and Grill. Red Rooster is your neighborhood bar and grill serving the best wings, burgers, and baskets in the Met.
Like the amazing food, the bar is always on tap, and there's plenty of screens to watch the big game. Red Rooster is the Midland's premier meetup spot for local car and bike clubs, fraternities, and sororities.
Staff is dedicated to accommodating all kinds of parties and events. If you're looking to catch a game, have a bite, and a drink, look no further than the Red Rooster.
Red Rooster is located at 7500 Wilson Boulevard, Columbia, South Carolina. For more information, visit redroostersportsbar.com or visit them on Facebook and Instagram at Red Rooster Sports Bar. Go where the winners go.
Welcome to the Hilltop Glove Podcast.
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 Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Hilltop Glove Podcast. Today, we have the pleasure of interviewing Yore. Yore is a Los Angeles-based production assistant, voiceover artist, and podcast producer. She has worked on programs such as Shahs of Sunset, House of Cards, and BT Awards. Yore also has her own podcast, 5 Minutes with an Akata, that seeks to understand and repair the cultural gap between African Americans and the African diaspora. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
Hey, y'all. Super excited to be here. I'm great.
Yay.
It's the holidays, so, you got that feeling of joy on the inside.
How's your weather out there?
I'm good. How y'all doing? It's so finicky. It reminds me of Baltimore. It's making me miss Baltimore. It's up and down. It's been cold, and I'll go outside with a hoodie on, and they're like, no, it's actually
my Lord,
nice,
Jesus.
Cool
Living next to the coast.
It was kind of toasty yesterday.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And it's so funny when I talk to people, I feel like, because I got family in California, and I still got my community and my people back in Baltimore, and it very much feels like we all be going through the same. Quality is real, because we're not supposed to all be going through
our weather's supposed to be different.
Weather, like that's.
Yes, but I always like to ask people how their day's going. I want to how's your year been going out there living in LA with, the different things happening, et cetera, all the coronavirus stuff. How has it been living out there, moving in?
That's a good question. Not too bad. I would say that it's been okay for me personally because I freelance. And so in terms of coronavirus, in terms of, COVID restrictions, I've probably been too good to sit down somewhere. I definitely did a lot of traveling.
So your business hasn't been halted too much by because I know out there in California, you got different laws and restrictions, regulations than we do here in South Carolina. That's why I asked that question, especially as a creative. I was just wondering how it was looking out there with the changes and whatnot. But
because in terms of, business, in terms of my podcast, everybody's remote. The same way I'm talking to you guys. Yes, I would say the first season we're probably more than half were in person. But other than that, everybody's.
Hey, man, it's the game changer, man. I always like to say it's the great equalizer. It has bridged the gap totally. Like within the past 2 to 3 years, that change that you have seen, it already started going that way, but it was kind of forced to go in overdrive. Right, Mike?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, we've been doing that. Yeah, we've been swinging that direction, but yeah, COVID kind of pushed everybody else who wasn't all the way down with being remote.
And that's a good thing, man, because we normally wouldn't be having a conversation.
Yeah, and it's so funny. It's kind of like the memes that went out. Some of us introverts were already introverts, so this is perfect. So like, I'm an introvert and extrovert, and it's just funny because like a whole bunch of people but were like, what do I do inside? And it was like, go talk to an introvert. Like, I could help you with that. So it's along those lines. Like everybody, like you said, everybody else.
Excellent. Well, just starting off with your background, I know our audience, they're going to be interested to hear how you became interested in the film and production industry, especially with your position as a production assistant and a producer. Could you explain how you jumped into that, like where you're from and how that became your goal and your career path?
Yeah. So I am, and it's so funny. I want to start off by saying I am a former, podcast and radio producer. That is where my real training is in. Or experience, I should say. My training is in production, but I have not been in that field in a long time. This year is like my year coming back. So I'm kind of considering myself reintroducing myself to it. Because if we're honest, you all know, like this industry is ever changing, especially with technology and social media. So the bare bones are still there, the obvious things are still there that I've learned, but there's still a lot of really new things. And I'm like, whoa. So I kind of used the pandemic as to say goodbye to my audio life in terms of producing for other people and then coming back to film.
No, you're fine. Take your time.
I just wanted to start with that. But I started off, it's so funny. So I actually started off in middle school thinking that I would be an artist for the most part, a singer and a dancer. I very much wanted to be a singer and dancer. I had a girl group. Me and my friends had a girl group in elementary school. I was writing songs. Like I was very serious. And one of my friends was like, no, you was really serious. Like we would be in practices and you were like looking at us like 1, 2, 3, let's go. Like, and they were not. And I was like, what's going on? What do you mean you want to play on the playground?
You were a mini Joe Jackson.
Practice.
You were a mini Joe Jackson to the kids.
It was a problem. I just had to calm down. But no, so when I was in middle school, I knew that I was going to go to a high school like a lot of my, and there's a photography major there. And I was like, okay, I'm going to become a photographer because I had an older cousin who would come home with, I'm going to become a photographer. Going to be on the set of like Essence or Ebony. Everybody subscribes to that. So that was all over my living room. And I was like, I'm going to work for one of these companies. And then I'm going to be on set doing photography. And then they're going to discover me when I sing. It's perfect. This is the plan. Oh, yeah. And they're going to love me.
Golden Hollywood dream.
And that's not what happened. So I went to high school and did a PSA assignment And so before you actually declare a major, you have to, take various classes, wood shop, auto shop, radio, everything, which was great because I was like, yeah, this is kind of, the vocation area. And it sets you up, for, scholarly as well. But so, yeah, I did an assignment to create a PSA and we had to have partners and I did it with a partner and we got like one of the top grades and my professor kept raving about it. And that's great. But for me internally, like, I was like, wait a minute, did I really just like take something out of my brain, put it on a piece of paper and now everyone can see what was in my brain? It was that breakdown for
magic,
me that like was like literally felt like magic. Not like no joke.
It is.
Like I know a lot of people like say different things, but like I really, really was like, and me. I literally had this in my head and now other people can see what before they couldn't see what was in my head. Like that's how deep it was for me. So I was like, I think this is what I want in the process that it, scripting it out, writing it out, finding people, directing, editing, the whole process was so exciting. And I didn't have all the terminology then still, but I knew this is it. I was like, oh my God, I don't know what this is. I don't know if this is I think I was saying director for a long time. I don't know if this is it. I just want to be like, and then, there's so many disciplines. There's film, there's television, there's commercial, and then there's so many different entities within that. And so, you kind of funnel that out as you get older. And so went through college and
question. Where did you, where were you in middle school and high school at? Go ahead, shout out Portland.
All day, I claim hard for Portland, Oregon, PDX.
Yeah, she represent her clit.
What I always do, it is so funny to me because people be like, I never knew there were black. Like, I get that all the time. It is so, no matter where I go, black and white actually, but mainly black. Black people, like, I didn't know there was Africans in Portland. I know there was black people. Like, I didn't know. Like, I get that every.
Oregon, wasn't it? Oregon was founded as kind of like a segregation state, like a white only state.
Absolutely. And I am.
Oh wow! Okay.
Whitest state in America, literally.
No, she's not lying. She's
serious. I remember my work dad. No, that's the joke, but it's like the serious. My work dad, Sean Yose, shout out to Sean Yose, would always say that. And I knew the history, but then I actually dove in a little bit more and was like, I knew, but like when you are rereading things and learning things as an adult, it's like,
different.
Oh my God, how did I survive? But to be honest with you, like I always tell people, like, I didn't realize I was in a white state until like people told me and until I got a little bit older. So like I was always around black people. I go to church, black. I'm with my family, black. I go to the park, black. I'm with my friends, black. So like I was always around my people. I was always in black neighborhoods. I was always in black settings. And yes, my schools were mixed and diverse. And I always just thought of that as diverse because I was also a PBS kid. So I'm looking at PBS shows and they talking about different cultures. And I'm like, yeah, this is what I see at school. And so I think as I got older, I was like, there are like we would have, I'm not gonna front, we definitely had jokes as kids, as me and my friends, like, look at the hippie white kids walking down the street without
leave them alone.
Their shoes and socks on. Like, why? You know what I'm saying? We would do that, but we just thought it was white people being white. We didn't realize, like, because we are actually surrounded around white people in this state. Like, I personally didn't think
how did your family get to Portland?
I get that question all the time as well. So my grandfather he got offered a job after the war. He's from Georgia. My grandmother and my grandfather are from Georgia. I believe he's from Warner Robins and she's from Macon. I mix them up all the time, but either way, they're both from both of those states. And then they came down, I think after 2 or 3, rest of into the 7. She ended. And then my dad is Nigerian. So my mom is African American, my dad's Nigerian, and my dad came here for school.
Where from in Nigeria is your father from?
Our Edo people.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow, man. Oh, man. All right. I guess, that leads really well into this next question. Like, and you were saying this, growing up in that, kind of like whiteout area. What obstacle did you face? Any obstacles trying to get out of there and pursue your dreams? Did they come from your community? Was it from the outside or just internal issues? Yeah, and internal.
That last part. I don't know that. Yeah, that part. I don't know that I faced any obstacles from people. I would just say, like any area, and I think I used to think so harshly about this in terms of Portland, and then when you leave where you're from and you talk where they're from, it's kind of the same thing. I hear this story everywhere, but there was just this mentality that I felt like, when people leave, they gonna come back, like, or I don't think there's anything wrong with working for the city, but I don't think people dream big enough. And so it's kind of just like, for me and what I experienced, I don't want to speak for all Black people from Portland, but like, that was my experience. It just kind of was like, well, I'm going to, and again,
somebody has to be there.
Nothing wrong with these occupations. Right. And not just someone is skilled to be there, right? And so I'm big on purpose. Like, that's one of my cores. And so like, I'm just like, this ain't for me. Like, and to be honest with you, school has always been a struggle for me. Education has always been like tough. Like, I've got family members that are always coming home with A's, and my mom graduated high school 3 years. And here I am talking about C's and D's, and they looking at me like, why? What's going on? So school has always been tough. And I was like, I don't think I'm going to make it as an adult. So, but I knew I was creative. I was really, really smart. I knew I was smart, but I was also bullied that I wasn't, it took me a little more time than other people. So I always felt kind of like slow and stupid, because that's.
Oh, Lord, they were rough. Yeah.
So listen.
I know. That's what I'm talking about.
Stupid at all.
Won't he do it? No, I'm just, so I would say it was a little bit of like feeling like if you dream kind of big, people kind of look like, for case an example, I remember when I came back, like my first year or maybe my sophomore year for Christmas break, I came back and I was telling people like, I'm going to start a production company. ID Production. 28. And instead of like, oh, that's what's up, like most people say, oh, how you gonna do that? That sounds hard. That's a lot. Don't you gotta do this? Don't you got like the response was so interesting, right? But then when I was in Baltimore, when I was on the East Coast, and I traveled, I would work. Me and my friends was always up and down that DMV, that East Coast line, like we was everywhere, and like, oh, that's what's up. I know a homeboy that let me know if you need
different energy.
It was different. It was not how are you going to? It was always more encouraging, and how can I help? And so that's what I mean. It was a mentality thing. And I'll be honest with you, my mom later told me, probably around that same time, like halfway through college, oh yeah, people be saying, you gonna come back. She'll be back.
Oh,
I was
like they didn't want you to succeed, or they didn't want you to leave them?
I guess the trend was when people, and it's just like they try to get out, like, got to get out of here. Oh. They don't survive. They don't make it. I guess that was the point. I don't know, I guess. And I'm just like, I really don't plan on it. Like, I was running. I was really, really running from a lot. My childhood was interesting. Yeah. It was good. I don't want to make it sound like it was bad, but I think leaving it, all I saw was the bad for a long time. And it took really good friends and I'm only looking at the negative I definitely had a background where I was rejected. I was rejected in every sense.
And question, where did you go to college?
I went to the illustrious Morgan City.
Oh, wow. All right.
Absolutely. I majored in broadcast, integrated television, integrated media with...
how did you, how was that experience there? How would you rank it?
It was amazing. So actually, let me couple it with the last question a little bit. So this is kind of what, outside of family, this is kind of what was my North Star, so to speak. I was in a program called I Love, and it was ran by the Bridge Builders through Kevin Fuller. And for me, it was everything. I loved it. It was a community of Black people coming together to learn about our history, to learn about unity and togetherness, to put God in the center of that. And it really promoted HBCUs. And so we would have they're called historic Black college tours. And so we would go and, the joke was that we were a mini fraternity sorority. Excuse me, that was the joke. And so we would go on these tours dressed alike in certain, paraphernalia and our little pullovers and our dresses and all this stuff. And we would have mission statements and we would sound the same and, all that stuff. So I didn't go to Morgan for one of my tours. I think we were kind of, if I remember, we went through like Texas and down kind of the South. And then, to be very honest with you, I can't remember all the states that we went to, but we had all those who came before us and what we call gents and Oshun. So basically it was a program where you had to go passage to show yourself that you're ready to go and present yourself to the community, to the village. Like just because you turned 18, exactly. that doesn't make. And so we had to learn a lot and go through a series of stuff to go through passage to become an Oshun. And so we had Oshun and gents, that's the guy side, because they're separate programs. But we did do, brother was a part of it. That's how I know him.
Yeah, it really is
school shit. This is
esoteric shit. Very, very popular in Portland for a long time. I think we might have been the last class to go through. Unfortunately, to me, it was. But so we had gents and Oshuns who would come back during what we call our Kwanzaa Gala Ball. And around that time, they would share with us. And there was another event. Oh, my goodness. Always shoot me in the foot. Shoot. There was another event that we would have. We had different events throughout the year where it was annual, where we would have the gents and the Oshuns that would come back and like just share with us their experiences being in college. Like, did you decide to stay in Oregon? Did you go to an HBCU or did you go to an Ivy League? And they would share these experiences. And one of my brother's friends went to Morgan. He shared with me how much he loved Morgan and how he was doing communications and how they were doing all this new stuff at the school. And it was in Baltimore. My brother was working at Johns Hopkins at the time, I think. And so it was, parents probably just felt comfortable with it. In my head, I was making my own decisions. And so we did like for our own family and really enjoyed it. And it didn't hurt that they had the same school colors. I was
Then you got to change your wardrobe.
Exactly.
That's excellent. Excellent.
Chose Morgan.
Well, all right. So of course, from there, of course, you go into the communications program. Of course, you had to have some influences that led you that way. What were some of those influences growing up? Like, were you avid movie goer or watcher? Did you like certain television programs? Like, what pushed you into this production?
Well, honestly, like I said, that project did. I can say what type of shows and stuff I was watching coming up. Honestly, a lot of stuff. So there were times when I had cable. Most of the time I didn't have cable growing up. But when I did have cable, it was Christmas. Old school. I am missing out on the name brand. It's like, it's the difference between Mr. Flakes and Frosted Flakes. Like, oh, man. So this is great. But I watched Moesha, Friends, all that. I wanted to be on all that so bad.
Man.
Mad TV. I wanted to be on Mad
the Jamie Foxx show.
Jamie Foxx show. Clueless.
Yeah, Recess
if you want to get into that. But I don't know if there's Lumafu fans out there.
Yes, Between the Lions. Yes, Dragon Tales.
Dragon Tales?
That's so dope.
Come on, Zoom Kid.
Zoom. Stop playing. All right, you was a PBS kid for real.
Right, cool.
Yes.
Little goosebumps. No. Okay. But, we can get into all that. But, within my top 5 is probably, Alicia, Friends. I'm Black and I'm saying Friends. There's Grace. Different.
Hillman the Game, one of our previous guests, made a trivia board game.
You can
based
purchase
off
it.
of different words.
Wait, I think I might have heard of that.
Yep.
I think I might have heard of that.
Yep.
That's so dope. But yeah, I pretty much watched everything. So yeah. And to this day, I think top 2 films right now. All right, I'm gonna just say 3. This is really off the top of my head.
I know you on the
actually.
spot.
So I would say I really love, and all the filmmakers get closer, like, let me see. All the film enthusiasts, I'm like, calm down.
We're not elitists. We watch all kind of shit.
All the connoisseurs. No, I would say Cinderella.
I know. I thought you were going to say
the black version. It's so
Brandy
funny.
version.
The Brandy version. It's so funny. It's so funny. We like the black version. It's not. The guy was like, where? He's like Filipino. And then I love musicals as a kid. And The Devil Wears Prada. I really love the concept. It's just I love the sense of not compromising and knowing where you're. And Bamboozled. Hey, Bamboozled. That was like, I watched that in middle school.
Didn't
probably
you
like
watch that in
6th grade.
fifth
Maybe
grade?
even 5th grade. But
Wow.
I know, right? So I don't know how I got my hands on it, but I was watching it. And then I remember talking to my brother. I was like, there's certain things I get, but I don't get. And then he was like, watch it again. I was like, but what about this part? Watch it again. He wouldn't help me.
Force you to go and delve into that knowledge bomb.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like I had a thirst for that. And I think maybe that's kind of, I don't know, maybe that's kind of what's growing up in Oregon.
Like seeing the layers within different things. I see.
Yes. And it was like, when I finally figured it out, like I haven't watched it in a while, but that was kind of, I guess, quote unquote, my woke moment. Cause, I love Black cinematography and Black shows and stuff like that anyway. But I feel like that kind of scratched an itch that was already there. And so I've always just loved, I would say those 3 are that. Oh, we have shaped.
So you add that to this feeling that you got when you realized that you could transmit ideas out of your mind into somebody else's.
Oh yeah, that would go along with that for sure. Absolutely.
Right. Okay. So then when you started doing this, what are you really like looking to contribute to, like, the zeitgeist of American media or the world as a whole? Like what you trying to say?
I think I spoke to it before in terms of my cores. Like, purpose is one of my cores, and unity and respect are the other. And when it comes to this project, those 2 things go hand in hand. And I think growing up in a Black home, but also being raised Nigerian was interesting. It was tough, and it was not always, but it was often kind of conflicting to the point where you're like you're one way at home and then another way when you go out. And so, and I think a lot of Nigerian Americans can attest to that. I feel like a lot of that is kind of coming out now too. So, but I've always felt like I wanted to tell that story. And so I would say probably in 2000, I just knew that I had stories that I wanted to tell, stories that were positive and that reminded people that you're going to be okay. Like that's what I knew I wanted to do before Akata came along. Like, I just loved, not necessarily that Hollywood ending, but a little bit of hope. Because there's just a lot of
not a Hollywood ending, just some hope. Good Lord, just some hope.
You know what I'm saying? Because you've got people, because I would be in classes where like, man, I hate that Hollywood and shit. Like people hate it. And I'm like, what? Like, college is that thing where you learn from other people and you're like, I never would have never thought of that. Like, I didn't know there were people who legitimately don't like Hollywood endings. And so that's why I'm not saying like everything's squeaky and shiny now, we can go skip in the park. Like, no, I'm not saying that. What I am saying is like, I want to be left with hope. Like, we can be honest, we can be real, we can be raw. We can say, I get that art, the imitation of life. And it needs to reflect it. But we can still sprinkle in hope, because what you see, you become. What you eat, you are.
Yes.
And so, words are powerful. So it's like, let's still make, and that's just my personal thing and my obligation. So that's just me, to each his own. I've watched plenty of films that don't do that. And it still inspired me to be like, dang, like, so there's still ways to do it, but that's just what I want to do. But in terms of your question, like, what do I kind of want to leave here? Like, when it comes to my production, like with this particular topic, I want people to know that we really can coexist. And I want people to understand that we are so much the same, more than we think we're different. That's the main, because, yeah. Because being, like I said, being part Nigerian and being part African American, which I don't even say, which is so crazy. Like, I never say, like, there are definitely times where I say, like, oh, I'm half this and I'm half that. But, like, if you were to ask me, like, if I was walking down the street and you say, what are you? I'm going to say Nigerian, African American. Like, I'm both. And I feel thoroughly both, personally. As thoroughly as I can be being born here in America, right? So, but the other struggle was, and I don't know if I'm jumping ahead here, but I can kind of just get into, like, what's got me to even want to tell this story, which is that, I love my people. You know what I'm saying? I love Nigerians. We dope. But sometimes we could be a bit harsh on certain things. And and I can say that from my experience, and I can say that and growing up, I was always quizzed. Still to this day, actually, growing up, this is still happening. They don't care how old you are. Like, you are still younger than me. I am not your mate. Who are you talking to? So, but they, I was always getting quizzed. When I was in, I think, my senior year at Morgan, I worked at Rite Aid. And so I got my name badge, right? Got my name badge on. I'm checking people out. I'm at the cashier, and people walk up and ask, or not people, but Nigerians would come in, and especially the older folk. Hey, what's your name? What's your name there? I see your name tag. What's your name? And I'm like, Yore. And this is why I say I don't mind. And I'm like, Yore. And they're like, hey, are you sure? And I'm like, Yore. No.
Oh, Lord.
I'm like, oh, my God. Here we go. It's like my childhood all over again. And they're like, so do you know what it means? Where are you from? Where's your father from? Okay, very good. Now, what is your name?
Lord.
I'm just like, do you just want to get your apple juice and leave? Like, there's a line. I just need you to leave. Like, this is embarrassing on multiple levels. And I'm like, yes, I know it. And then I tell him, and he's like, okay, very good. Well, because your daddy is Nigerian, you are Nigerian. You know that. When your daddy is from one place, that is the place you are from. I say, yes, sir. And you have to say, like, sir, you have a heavier accent, is sir. Yes, sir. I'm like, yes, sir. And he's like, okay, I'll be going now. Bye-bye. Like, it's just like back to, like, they go from, like, teacher mode back to, like, being this nice, pleasant, like, oh my God. But I got that real quick. Let me hit you up with this pop quiz real quick. Pop, who are you? Do you know who you are? Do you really? Like, and I got that a lot, and it was so annoying, bro. Like, it was super annoying, especially the part that would suck. And at one point, I started doing it more because I was like, this might be in my... But then I actually realized that they looked down on me more when I would tell them my mom was African American. And I'd be like, but you are, you go through the whole question. So after they ask you your name, where you're from. Okay, so you're Nigerian. Have you been to Nigeria? Yes, okay, that's good. Is your mommy from the same place your daddy is from? Like, and they want to know in terms of village. And I'm like, no. She's like,
oh my goodness.
It's always, okay. Like, that makes sense.
Oh, so you're not a real Nigerian.
Exactly. Yeah. That's literally what it felt like every single time. And so that was really annoying. And growing up, I just didn't always feel fully accepted by me. So I would say my dad's friends probably made me kind of feel okay about that. Like, not too bad, but like other people didn't. And so I was in a, what we call ISA, International Student Association, but most schools call it ASA. And I was on the board in the later years, but when I first just like joined, I think it might have been like my first meeting actually, like with my roommate freshman year. And there was a debate happening on whether or not, Nigerians have struggled. And this guy was, we have struggled though. We had to do this. My daddy had to do this when I came here to America. We had to do this. These Akatas, they don't know struggle. I was like, these black people, these black people, these black Americans, they don't know struggle. They don't know struggle.
Really?
I was like,
what you paying attention to?
Slave trade, my dear. Like,
400 years of history. This is out of the door. This is out of the window.
I was just gone. There it is, just finished. Like, never existed. And I was like, okay. And then I was like about to say something, but someone else kind of said something. And I'm gonna be honest, I was a little hesitant because, I didn't really know what I was going to say. Like, okay. But I've always felt like I had to defend both sides. And so I remember leaving that meeting and telling my friend and saying, hey, bro, like, what's a kata bead? And he was like, well, I mean, I don't know. It's just like no one could really tell me. They're like, it's just like African American. And so my other friend actually told me, like, nah, it means wild cat or wild dog or like fox. And I was like, are you serious? So why are they calling us that? You know what I'm saying? And he's like, I mean, not you, you're Nigerian. I was like, nah, my mom's African American too, bro. Like, and he's like, oh, okay. And I've had friends who were like, I didn't know your mom was African. You act so Nigerian. Like, people always say that. And I'm like, well, I'm Nigerian, so I'm just being me. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know
you were raised.
Act, but so much. Because I guess they'll be like, I've met other people who are half and they don't know stuff.
Yeah.
And that's not their fault. Exactly. I feel like a lot of times that falls on the parent, you know what I'm saying? And then the other part did fall on me where I was just there were definitely parts of my culture that I really loved. And so I would kind of engross myself in them and make sure that I was around it and learned about it. But yeah, so once I would say this became an obsession with the word, and I was literally obsessed. I just could not understand why there wasn't a real definition. And then that turned into let me double back. I would say I was frustrated first. I was very frustrated with this word, and I was seeking out to expose the word and get everybody to, not use this word, and we don't have to start a petition. Like, I was very...
You're a militant.
Very, much like, we are going to abolish this word now. People don't know. And so I would have a lot of conversations with people before I decided to make it a student project. So I made it a student project, and I remember talking to a professor, and I think this was after I made the project. Can't remember if this was after or before.
Hey.
I got an A, by the way, praise the Lord. But I believe he didn't like the title. He was like, that's too long. And it was, like, looking back, it was weird, bro. It was like the demographic of Nigerians in America from the diaspora. It was like long and like it was freaking, what is it called? Jeez, I can't think of the word. Like essay, dissertation. There you go. Like it was like no, you're not. It's just a film. Like you want people to watch it. Okay, so but he was like, I need just a word. Like what's like you need to sum it up in a word or a phrase. And his back was turned to me. He was like walking around in his office, and his back was to me in the chair at the moment. And I was like, I turned the chair on.
Oh my Lord.
That's it. That's it. What does that mean? I want to know. Like, he was really in for it. I was like, okay, that's it. That's the one. And so that's where the title came from, essentially. And the student project, like I said, turned into this obsession where everywhere I wanted to ask people about this word. Every Nigerian that I would come in contact with, I would like to have this conversation and dialogue about it. So, and then I started working on a documentary about it. And then that didn't work out the way I wanted to. So I did a docu-series. I started the first series, and then things didn't work out the way I wanted them to, beyond my control. And then I wanted to put it down. Like, honestly, I was like, I'm so done with this. I don't want to do this anymore. Like, it's just not working out the way I want to. I don't have the funds. I don't have the team. I don't have this, da, da, da. And then just got this inspiration to do it. And then I will say there were definitely times where, because I was working for a public radio and because I was working for a radio station that was well known in the city, shout out to, I remember there was a lady who came up to me and she was like, I don't know how or where, I can't remember all the details, but I'll never forget the moment. And somehow she might have heard my name in the crowd or something. And she was like, wait, are you that Yore girl? I was like, what? Aren't you the girl with the documentary? I was like,
oh, people talking about me.
Right. I was like, I put that down. You know what I mean? But it was that moment that reminded me that I had to pick it back up, because she was like, oh, it sounds so interesting, because I was promoting it, and really like going for it. I was really serious, to the point where my friends, even like my best friend, like forced me to have a release party, and we did a panel discussion that went really well, did the whole 9 yards, but it just wasn't up to the standard that I wanted. Even as a young indie filmmaker, I'm just like, man, this is not what I like. So it is not for public consumption at this point. But it was that moment with that lady that reminded me, like, I guess I gotta pick this back up, because that wasn't the only time. Like, I had other people asking me who knew me or knew me through other people, who were like, aren't you working on that documentary? How's it going? Da-da-da-da. I want to see it, And so I decided to do a scripted short series. And then what I've realized is that I'm a visionary and I think very, very big. And then I have to funnel it down to like, okay, but these are your resources, right? If you want to do something right now, this is what it has to look like. Right. And so then it just became a short. So we did a lot of where we eliminated a lot of scenes and just decided to film certain scenes to compose a short. So essentially it is a series long type of project, but we took certain scenes to create a short. And yeah, we did that and started in 2019. Finished it, and I did submit it to a smaller film festival in London, and we did get first-time filmmaker selection, which was really cool. So I need to put it through some more film festivals. But at this point, it's really just like proof of concept for me. That's really what it is, to get people to see visually, like, this is what I see, and there's so much more that can come. But that's where I am with it. And that's how it started. Like, I just could not understand for the life of me why there isn't a real definition. And then in my study and in my research with the documentary, I feel like I have found the definition. I feel like I found something that no one's been able to say. So, and that's perfectly fine. Like, if someone says it today, I'm like, okay, great. But that doesn't mean I still don't have this theory about how we got to where. So I'm in conversation with different historians and reaching out to different linguists.
That's the thing about words, though, is
like
they evolve kind of individually. Like every person that hears it has their own kind of thing that goes with it, right?
Exactly. That's the like, bro, I cannot stress enough the different, definitions that I've collected over the years. And more recently, I started actually writing them down. And so there was this lady on the bus train to Philadelphia, and she gets on the bus. I see she's Nigerian. The seat is empty next to me. I'm like, she's about to sit next to me. She sits next to me. And then I always feel this pressure, because as a Nigerian, when you walk into a room or you see an elder, like, you're supposed to speak. Which is also interesting because my dad will also say, like, don't speak unless you're spoken to. And it's just like, I'm so confused. But like, what is happening? But when she got on, I kind of felt like I always do this. And I'm like, should I speak up? Is she going to know right away I'm Nigerian? Maybe she will. If she asks me my name after an hour on this plane, after an hour on this train, and I didn't say, hi, I don't know if it's going to get back to my dad. Like, literally, like, anxiety. And so I'm just like, let me just come out with it. I said, hello, how are you? And she was like, hi, how are you? I was like, good. And I was like, are you Nigerian? And so I just kind of come out with it now. I'm like, okay, well, nice to meet you, auntie. Because that's what, you call people auntie or uncle out of respect. So, and so we get to talking and I was like, hey, can I ask you a question? Now, this was one of the game changers, I would say. This definition I had never heard. I was like, what? She was like, oh, it's like yourself. Because we had already talked. So I told her a little bit about myself. It's like yourself, you are young, you are accomplished, it's like someone of a certain class system, someone who has something, they are well off, they have done well for themselves. I said, what? I ain't never heard this one. I was so thrown off. And then when I went to Nigeria to see my dad, I was talking with him and his friend, and I said, do you mind if I ask you, do you know what the word Akata means? Oh, yes, of course. It's like your father. Your father is an Akata. I said, how? He lives here though. Yeah, it's someone who has left their home. They went to be successful. They have come back, to take care of their family.
So is it like a sellout? Is that what they trying to do?
Wrong on multiple levels. But I was like, wait, what? Exactly. And so when I told one of my friends this, who is kind of just tired of the conversation, and I get it because it's been had in communities for a long time, but it hasn't, it's not taking a larger stage just yet. And I definitely would hope to do that. But like, she was like, it's just like, it's not negative or it is negative, and either way, we shouldn't, like, I'm not using it. So I'm just kind of getting tired. It's the same conversation. I said, I hear you. Well, let me tell you this. And I told her those two things, those two stories, those two scenarios I just told you. She was like, wait, what? I didn't know that. I said, exactly. Yep. And that is the point in the podcast. So that is the point of 5 minutes with Akata. Literally, I can't stress it enough. I say this all the time. Step into my shoes. Step into my shoes and come walk with me on this journey that I've already taken. I just want to take everybody with me and see if you arrive at the same place I've arrived in terms of what your understanding, in terms of your mentality, in terms of what you gather from having these conversations with different people that seemingly are the same. Some of these people are coming from the exact same communities and still yet have very different definitions. And so that's a problem. It's kind of dangerous, right? Like we're all using words that we're using a word that we really don't understand the meaning of.
Yeah.
Or how it's perceived by everybody else.
It can be thought of like slang or ebonics. Like you can make up your own slang, but if you go use that in another territory, another region, it may be something you don't want to say. It could end up being something bad for you. Man.
Mm-hmm. And so, like I said, it started off with irritation. Then it just became obsession. And now I'm free. Now I feel freed. I'm having a ball, and no offense, but you all are now very frustrated. and I'm just like, man, I'm excited because, when I do these interviews, I'm a little more hopeful. When I hear people answer the question. I ask the same three questions. What does the word Akata mean? Have you heard it before? 2, why is there a division between African and African Americans? 3, how are we the same? What's one thing that you find that's similar? And those answers are the most beautiful ones because you can see people, especially when you have some people who don't think we are, right? You've got a lot of people who don't think we are, and that's okay. We are entitled to our opinion. And we are different. We do have a lot of differences. But my job is to hopefully show you that we've got some similarities, or at least to think about it. And if you want to think about it for 5 seconds and that's it and go on with your life, I've done my job. But at least you thought about it for 5 seconds. And I've seen people who, in person and on the podcast, nah, bro, we are so different, da 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 da. And then after I have a conversation with him, like, yo, I didn't even think about it like that, bro. Like, dang.
Man,
Yeah.
I have an
Yeah.
Oh, I was about to say, I have an interesting question.
I'm
And this is funny because you get to talk to those people on your podcast, and you get to have these conversations. And of course, being Nigerian and also having African American cultural roots, you get to see both sides. But isn't it interesting that there is a gap between us when there is a majority culture that takes advantage of both of our cultures likewise without even giving any reason for difference? They don't care if you're Black from the continent or if you're Black in the diaspora. You're going to get the same exact treatment no matter where you're coming from. Is that ever discussed? Like, does that ever come across in your discussions with family members or other Nigerians when you talk about, well, yeah, you may think y'all different, et cetera, but the people that run stuff really don't see any difference between us?
Right. And it's not interesting. It's very much intentional, unfortunately. I think it is extremely intentional. And I've had those conversations with family, I think, as an adult now.
It's hard to do, yeah.
But growing up, no. Those, you know what I mean? Like, no, you weren't necessarily having. Well, not even just that, but we've just been in this moment where people are being awakened to things. I'm refusing to say woke, but
they've been made aware.
We're being
notice.
awakened.
Yes.
There's levels to woke. Yeah. Being woke ain't where it stops.
Okay, come on now. And I think what social media has done, and it's good and bad. Within its good and bad, what social media has done is it's forced different communities, different kind of niche people who just do this thing. It's literally collided everybody together to like have a window and a door into someone else's community and actually can come in and be part of it. And so I think that's kind of why we're forced in a way to see like, oh, I don't. So let me run it back. I do apologize. The same person that I was talking about before who was kind of tired of having this conversation about Akata, I interviewed her some years back. And when I asked the question of like, do you guys understand like this, how do you feel about the Black community, about African Americans? How do you feel about social justice, things like that? And they were like, well, I'm gonna be honest, I don't get it. I don't get why there's this anger. This is a Nigerian talking. And this is years ago, by the way, who I don't think she subscribes to this mindset. Give her some grace, guys. But she's like, I just don't get it. Like, I just don't understand why they're so angry and they're shouting and there's this, like, I get what Martin Luther King did, but like today, like, I don't understand why there's this struggle. Like, what are we struggling for? She's like, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm Nigerian. I saw my parents struggle to get here. They didn't use any excuse and they just decided to do what they had to do. And now we're here. Like, so I don't get it. Like, what are we shouting for? What is the struggle for? And that was the first time I ever heard that. And I was dumbfounded.
Bootstrap narrative.
But she was just saying what she saw. She was just only speaking from her experience. Like, you can't blame her. I'm glad that she got to a point where she's no longer thinking like that. And I bet she doesn't even remember that. I bet she doesn't even remember that conversation. She probably don't even remember. I got it recorded though.
I got it recorded though.
It's cool. I got it though. And I think back to that's why I say social media has done what it's done is I think right now what's really interesting is everybody's kind of Black. Like everyone's Black and everyone has, there's an issue with being Black. And so we all associate with that. And I feel like that can be good and that can be a little bit bad. But I say all that to say, I think that it's taking social media and the younger generation to see what our parents couldn't see, or what I would say what some of our parents could see. Because I do think that my parents were thinking along this line. But what some of our parents couldn't see, which is that, Africans aren't here to steal jobs. And that's like a number one thing that we hear. And African Americans aren't lazy. And so I think these kind of general, broad statements that we have for either group, I think we have to get to the why. Like, I always think about that. Like, have you really thought about why you think African Americans are lazy? Have you really thought about why you think Africans are
lazy? That's a good question. I think some of that is based on divide and conquer. I think some of it is based on. I know I have a very good Nigerian friend named Odi, Mr. Odudu Essien. But we've had this conversation before, and one of the things that we always get down to is the fact that for folk in the diaspora, there's a feeling, and I know for him, his thing was, we have a place to go back to. I actually have a home. I have a village. I know who my people are. I know where I'm going.
Yeah, I heard that.
We don't have
time.
one. Yeah. And so it leaves us literally, it's like having a tree without roots. Where do you go back to draw your power from, your cultural understanding? For a lot of folk in the diaspora, we've had to create our own cultures, create new cultures, take bits and pieces that we had from the old cultures and the old land and make it new to fit us here for survival in the new world. And that being understood by peoples who have a place. And I'm going to put it on the status of this. If you go to if somebody from China comes over here to study and they don't like the place they're living at, they can always go home. For us, when we see Africans, especially coming from wherever they may come from, Benin, you come from Namibia, wherever you come from, Uganda, when you come over here, you can get your study on, you can get whatever degrees you want. You don't have to stay here. You have citizenship back home. You can go home to your mother country. You have a mother tongue. We don't even have a mother tongue anymore. So that breakup for us is extremely painful. And that's part of that issue where people don't understand the disadvantage or the trauma that comes along with that, not having your culture still be what it is. Even for people that come from, and this is outside of Africans, just any immigrant that comes to America, if you have the ability to go back home. And I think that's a thing that is misunderstood, and it creates a gap between us being able to communicate properly.
I agree. I do agree with that. I agree with everything that you just said. I just also think that we should just.
No, that's my big thing. Yeah, there's a why. Yeah.
Held bound. You know what I mean? We shouldn't be held bound by the why. We should know the why and the why still, because now it's our responsibility at this point. But you know, my mind is going in so many directions right now with this because I decided to start doing Clubhouse.
Wow.
Conversations.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I never wanted to. Clubhouse. I despised Clubhouse. Yes, Clubhouse. I despised you. And I did not. I absolutely did not want to go on Clubhouse. I was like, not another platform. It's just too much. And then, I heard how divisive it was, especially when it came to hot button topics like this, that people are just being divisive. And, you've got all respect to people who want to identify as not African-American, but you've got a lot of people who don't want to identify as African-American. There's all these new terms and that people want to identify themselves as, and, we've got to get reparations and, all this stuff. And hey, listen, I am not saying no to reparations. And I am also not saying you can't not call yourself African-American, but I kind of think you do yourself a disservice when you do. I've heard the arguments, but I digress.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't want to get on Clubhouse. So, but I decided to get on, and the very next week I decided to host my own room. And it lasted over an hour, and it was amazing. And I was so excited. And so some of the conversations that have come from that, I asked questions, and I would have a panel of people that come on. And we ask these type of questions. We have this, it's kind of expanded through the podcast. It's longer than, 5 minutes. And I think I named the group More Minutes with a question mark. But, a lot of the conversation that came from that is it's misconceptions that are happened all around. And again, why? Why are there misconceptions? And so then, you've got African-Americans who feel like Africans are just coming here and they don't realize that they have a benefit to what we had to struggle, and don't even recognize the struggle, let alone recognize that we have a culture and all these other things. And I would often say that, like I said, I'm often defending both sides. When I'm in a room,
That's what you got to do if you undo the othering.
Yeah, that's true.
You know,
say that again, Mike.
Say it again.
I said that's what you got to do if you're trying to undo the othering. You know, like that's if somebody's trying to split up these groups, you got to start from like, what do we have in common? What's different? Why is it different? Is we're all sitting on this pale blue marble, just spinning around a bajillion miles a minute, going through space. Like, you know, at the end of the day, we all want our family to be happy. We want to be fed. We want to feel
the same
fulfilled.
thing.
Like, it doesn't matter where you're from. We can all connect on that shit.
Right. Exactly. Bare bones, bare minimum.
I need to breathe air, drink water.
We speak the same language, human.
Yeah, I wanted to add something to that, especially what Mike said. And the reason this conversation is so awesome is the fact we're starting to kind of get to like the root cause of a lot of, especially with this particular topic, the root cause of a lot of problems that we have with our society, with the world as a whole, when it comes to differences. And sometimes when you have differences, we've been conditioned to think about differences based on inferiority versus superiority. Right. Yep. So it's like, because by nature, we're trained to, like, our minds biologically, we're supposed to be discriminatory. Right. So when you go out in the woods, okay, this is an apple. This is a crab apple. Right. I eat the apple. I don't eat the crab apple because why? The apple's healthy for me, which is superior, and the crab apple is not healthy for me. It'll just be very sour and is inferior. Right. So evolutionary speaking, we know we've kind of developed that way. However, as the world has gotten more complex and society has gotten more complex, we still struggle with those same issues because a lot more of the issues we have, there's really not that much of a difference when it comes to people or culture. However, the powers that be have figured out, okay, well, we can divide and conquer, or we can manipulate people because we can weaponize certain characteristics or attributes. Or let's say, like, and this is one of the things I notice a lot of too, is you'll see, especially on social media, and I'm glad you brought this up earlier, you'll always see like, okay, this person from this particular country started this app, right? It could be fill in whatever country, right? And you'll notice that a lot of the people who like it are usually those people from that particular country, right? Especially when it comes to a lot of like I guess you would say a lot of like the different like blogs or posts throughout the diaspora, like the different like people who post content. But one of the things is, it's like, in a way, we don't realize it. And even this happens within the African-American community, too. It's like we weaponize success and we allow it to be weaponized. So it's like, if this person over here is Jamaican, right? And they come up with this amazing app. It's not that it's a good app because it's for the betterment of mankind, right? There are people who sometimes look at it like, okay, yeah, you know, Jamaicans, you know how we do it. We always be putting our thing down. Right. I don't know about anybody else. Right. And I'm not picking on them. Right. Or any other group. But especially when it comes to diaspora and in our communities, we tend to do that to each other. And I noticed that a lot, even with the big thing. I know you're familiar with this, even with the big thing when it comes down to Hollywood and Black actors portraying roles of different characters throughout the diaspora. And they might not be a member of that particular culture. And that's like, for example, like, what's the movie? Like with the Martin Luther King movie.
Selma.
Or Selma, yeah. And, you know, and the conflicts when it comes to those things, right? Because it's like, you know, people feel like if it's not them representing, or even better, what just recently happened a couple of months ago with Michael B. Jordan. And this has nothing to do with acting. This is more like this questions online. It's a cultural appropriation. But when he tried to create that new drink, the one that took the Caribbean name, and you remember especially the Trinidadian community was really in arms about that.
Yeah.
I think some of this is like just like ongoing ambient culture of imperialism and colonialism and like that era kind of just infected everybody with this idea that it's like, it's about us and fuck everybody else.
I mean, I think those ideals definitely have affected us. We're all conditioned, period, like whether we want to be or not. And so I think once you realize that you are, I think you should do yourself a service to try and uncondition yourself to the best of your ability, to the best of the human ability. I do think, so I've heard different sides of this argument, and it bleeds into another thing that I actually would love to talk about and ask you guys. I know I'm the guest, but I love to ask people this question.
Go ahead.
You know, I think some people would just say, well, acting is acting. You know what I'm saying? If the person did a good job, the person did a good job. And I'm here for that. Totally. I do think that you should try to exhaust your options, though. I do think you should try to find, you know, did you really look to find someone that could play MLK from the African American community? And I love David Yellow, so I have no problem with the guy at all. I think he did a great job. And I think it's also, like you just said, like, it is the conditioning of how Hollywood works. It's who you know. And it wasn't even a matter of, you know, they might have been thinking of different things. They might have been thinking, you know, hey, I would love for you to play this part because I really think that it would be a way where we could bridge Black British actors, you know, to, like, there might be so much
but he's
more.
also
And I know that there's this
well-known commodity. That's what people don't get. It's easier to get to him to get him in, right. And you know what you're going to get. You know the quality of you see what I'm saying? Part of this product.
Right. So back to the simple, basic skill of acting. It's acting at the end of the day. And so some people feel like, well, if I can do the role, I can do the role, period. It doesn't really matter where I'm from. And I think there's a good point to that. I do think that we should do our best, you know, because I think we should do our best to make sure that people are portraying the role as authentically as they can. And if that means to also cast
region
from that, to cast the actor that is from the same place as the character, that would be great. You know, I don't think it's always a must, but I do think it is important because it gets back to that conversation of, well, they're coming here and stealing our job.
Yeah.
Because we know that that's not true. No one's coming. Well, sorry. Some people still very much feel like that. So I don't want to invalidate people's opinion.
Well, sometimes Dick Gregory would say, the truth does not need to be validated by ignorance. So it's the truth, man. Like, we know that's not the case. It's like when people used to say, we're saying Mexicans are coming to steal jobs. No one's doing those jobs. Those tomatoes are dying in the fields.
Yeah. Because some of the things that, and, you know, we have really, right. And some of the things that, you know, that we've talked about in my clubhouse rooms is that, like, yo, like,
that's
I actually came here with degrees. I didn't come here with, like, you know what I mean? I came here with degrees. I did the job.
And they sought out them.
I applied for the job and they brought me over. And they, right. And so, you know, and to the, you know, I don't want to sound too conflicting or contradicting here, but at the same time, I do think that, well, let me finish my first point, which is that we should try our best to hire those who are, yes, best for the job in terms of skill and talent, but who can best portray and have some type of relation to this character in terms of their.
It usually comes across in the actual performance. If you actually have a.
Well, there's deeper things to that character that you might not know about.
Yeah. Right. Like the gentleman who played
Right. Well, you don't know the exact. You don't know the particular experience,
right? Which we never do entirely. That's what acting is, but you might want to get close.
Yeah, a biopic. Yeah, exactly. Like
right?
What's the movie? Had a young brother in it. Good Lord, who played in Get Out? He was playing a man from the Black Panthers who. Good Lord, I can't say his name. This is horrible. I know, right?
God,
this is like the bed. Like, I'm horrible. I had to do that because I was trying to say that because it's not. He did a great job. He did a phenomenal job, and he was like the only quote unquote people non-FBA in there, but he did a great job, and it was good to have him in that role. And another reason why I say that, Daniel.
Yeah, Daniel Kaluuya. Yes. I believe I'm pronouncing it the last.
I don't want to put ourselves in a position where you hurt yourself trying to become so pure. Because, like, I want to have a Black James Bond. I want Idris Elba to be James Bond. I'm not trying to get us out of that race. You know what I'm saying? So, like, there's certain things where I think it is important, and like you said, I think mainly being seen just like biopics. Those are the ones where that's important. But elsewhere, like. please hire the best talent. Cause I'm a merit-based, I love merit-based, movement. Like I don't want people to get a position just based off of nepotism or you have the color or the creed for something. I want the best person in it, because that's what actually creates a more honest and equal society. And I know we were just having a conversation with one of our friends, he's a lawyer, about the fact that in law, you have to have a balance between morals and also legal, because to go all one way or the other, you're going to put yourself in a hurt position when you fall in a position where you now need the benefit of the doubt. And so, yeah, man, I think you have to have it both ways.
Yeah. And so to the other point, you know, one of the things that I was sharing in the clubhouse rooms is that I saw my parents in the same field. Wow. They're both social workers, climb the same type of ladder. And granted, my dad did decide to go on and get his master's, but if I'm not mistaken, hearing this from both of them, if I'm not mistaken, if childhood memory serves right, they, before getting his master's, my dad was still afforded more opportunities than my mom. And so there is some degree of conditioning there where I think personally, Europeans who set the standard for not just America, but this globe, they have set a global standard. As much as we don't want to acknowledge that, a lot of nations are looking to how Europeans have set certain standards, whether robbed or not. But they look at foreigners, Black foreigners, as smarter and better than African Americans and Blacks in this country. And so while I'm not saying they're here to steal jobs, I personally do think that when they see, and this is up for argument, and this is the kind of the conversation we would have on Clubhouse that went on for almost over 2 hours. This, when they see a resume a white person sees a resume that comes across their desk, they see a Nigerian name, they're automatically thinking, boom, they're smart, like automatic. And there's something to speak to, their education system. I think outside of America, the education systems outside of America are very rigorous. There are a lot of people who it is fact that people come here and are often higher than their age group. My brother was born here. My oldest brother was born and raised here. But when he went to Nigeria for 10 years and came back, he was above his grade, basically, like his regular class.
Yeah, we fucked
that up. And so that can be a struggle too, just because their education system is a little bit ahead.
Those educational trials over there, and you're able to get here, they know it's the cream of the crop. That's another thing, because I know this from dealing with recruiters. Yeah. You aren't sending the worst over.
But to the point though, but what I don't like though is that, again, that's still a generalized. You're generalizing still.
No. Not in that sense. What I'm saying is based on the literal statistics, you can't. It's expensive, first of all, to get a good education, and at the same time to achieve the ability to be able to be up for an opportunity elsewhere outside the country. It's going to be a bit harder to do. So usually what you have, and this is a big thing that's going on right now, this is outside of Africa, but dealing with Iranian scientists, there's a large group of female Iranian scientists that are going out throughout the world, getting all the jobs, picking everything up. And they're like, yo, how is this happening? Well, in Iran, they have a system where they are producing and attempting to educate their female population in all STEM programs. And this is what I'm saying. This is an actionable item. This is something that's actually happening. And it is awesome. And when people see this, they're like, well, they're just coming to steal jobs. I'm like, no, they are good at what they do. That's right. There you go. It's intentions.
They're being intentional. Yeah.
Human doctors.
But that's still different from my point. I hear you. And I'm cool with that. But that's still different than my point of just kind of this blanket, okay, great. We're going to, I'll be honest with you. I think that there are privileges that we all have. We've all got privileges. And I think that sometimes when you're talking about hiring, when you see two resumes, if you see Tanya Jones versus,
we need a good name.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of I'm just going to use mine. Like Tolu Odigizua, you're going to be like, Tolu she might fit the bit. Like before you even meet them, because you're already thinking, well, they probably came from this education. Before you even look through the resume and you're already conditioned to think before you even interview the person. That's what I'm saying. That's the conditioning we have to undo. And if we're honest with ourselves, we all are doing it. I really do think that we do that. I'm not, especially those who aren't Black. I'm saying, because those in power is what I'm saying. Like those in power that are making that decision. Let's be real. You're doing that. And so, I saw my dad kind of climb up a little faster than my mom because of that. Because it's like assumes like, well, I mean.
And part of it too, I think, is
you got to be smart and you're Nigerian. Right. Okay, great.
Yeah,
what if he's not though? And what I'm saying is at least give, go into it, blanket. And maybe you realize my mom's name is Sonia. Oh, you know what? Sonia is actually smarter than he feels. Like just go in, like blanket. You don't know. We all are conditioned. Our brains categorize. We like to put things in boxes and figure it out just based on what we're seeing. Yep. We do judge by the cover often because it's human nature to do, but we still have to do the work to undo that as much as humanly possible to be like, okay, wait, no, let me give this a fair chance.
And Yore, I have a question for you. Do you think some of it is based on, and this I want to understand because you have both perspectives. Some of it I think is based on the fact when you know it's an African American, right? You know that there's a certain amount, especially when you're looking at against somebody who's from the continent, you're looking at it. That person has a certain background, history, and understanding that may make them hostile to you, i.e. they've been through, you see what I'm saying? That baggage doesn't come with that person from the continent. So I can deal with them in a different way than I would this African American.
Oh, that's such a good point. That's such a great point. That's an unfortunate one. That's an unfortunate
employers specifically.
You say it again? Right.
Yeah.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point. And I also want to note though, within these conversations that I'm having on Clubhouse, I've heard, people will come on and say, well, as a argument to what I just said, well, a lot of people aren't realizing that, and I said it before, but I just want to make it clear that a lot of Nigerians are coming here with the degrees, and to get to America or, just to get to another country is very tough. Like you just said with the young ladies from where exactly. So like I just want to make it clear that I am I don't want to not acknowledge that there is a struggle still, even for Nigerians trying to get employed. I just want to make that point. Right. That's not my point. Right. I just want to make that clear. I know that there is quite the journey to even get employed here, to get here, let alone get employed here. Like that's a two-sided, sword, if you will, or two-edged sword. So I think, if I'm honest, I think that, and I'm gonna just be real with y'all. I do think that my name gives me some privilege.
How is it understanding that and being in your business you work in, knowing that, having that actuality? How do you move about through it? Do you feel guilt?
No, not at all. You use what you have to be fair for other people. And so when I have these conversations, the first thing I say, these are house rules. You're in this room. I would really appreciate if I challenge you even to not be so quick to have your rebuttal or have your points or just listen. I actually challenge you to listen to someone else. And so I like to think that I'm very fair. So when I walk into spaces, I try to be very fair. And I try to think,
it's hard to do.
I try to be very fair. I try to be very fair. And it is hard to do, but when you start trying, it gets back. Exactly. When you practice something, tennis was probably, well, maybe it wasn't hard for Venus. It probably was. If I picked it up, it was just beastly with it. But But I'm sure the way they play now is no way that they could play when they were younger. Yes, it of course it's hard, but if you keep at it, it becomes easy or easier, So I like to think that, like, even with the projects that I'm working as I'm indie, very indie. Would like to help and subscribe in any type of way. Giving you, girl,
Patreon.
Speaking to, yes, we gonna talk. I literally am thinking about it. It's so funny that you said that. I'm really thinking about it because these conversations go longer than 5 minutes, bro.
Oh, yeah.
These conversations have gone to almost an hour, to the point where
why did you just start with 5 minutes?
Right. So I started with 5 minutes because, dang, I feel like we're jumping around. I started with 5 minutes because I knew as a PA and as a freelancer, I have to be available. Jump around, and I don't have the bandwidth to be sitting and listening to hours long of audio and editing. And I'm doing the managing, I'm doing the promoting, I'm doing the booking, I'm doing all of it. So I got to be smart about my resources. And that's why I did the podcast in the first place. Because I was like, I want to be done with podcasts. I want to be done with audio, radio, all of that. I want to go straight into film and video. But then I was like, man, but I still want to be working on this project while working on other people's work for the time being. And I was like, man, maybe I should just do my own podcast. I have to be short if I do it. I was like, how should I do this?
Smart.
So honestly, it's convenience. Honestly, it's convenience. And not just convenience, it's kind of like a public
It is a case study.
Yeah, it's like a public case study. It's public for people to kind of see. And I'm very intentional about like who I ask and where they're from, what area they're from. Because again, with the conditioning, depending on your environment, like you said earlier, like this is how certain people think from Baltimore typically. This is how certain people think from Oregon typically. This is how certain people, so that's why I'm like, let me talk to Nigerians from kind of a little bit all over. And I'm not done. Yeah. You know what I mean? We got more seasons to go. Yay. But, it's like, what can I really do with my resources? Can I really achieve this within a 5 minute block? Can I really do this in 5 minutes? And so that's why I only asked 3 questions. And honestly, even the 3 questions be too much. But sometimes I can only do 2.
Yeah.
Sometimes I can only do 2. And then there were even some episodes where I had to do part 1, part 2, because it got so good. Like, I'm telling you, they be hours long, and I really have to time this thing. Like, I'm so sorry, we have to wrap this up. Or making the extended versions available on Patreon. So I'm thinking about it, my brother. I heard you.
Because these are cultural conversations. They don't end in the interview. They don't end in our generation. This is the ongoing thing.
But at the same time, I know my generation, and my generation is me, and attention span is
right. 5 minutes is kind of that golden, right?
Exactly. And I know I'm like, who am I? I ain't nobody that's gonna be like, why can't I listen to your podcast? Like, what? Don't nobody know me? So this is a quick 5 minute. I can convince you to listen to 5 minutes, and you're like, oh, okay. Oh man, that was good. Now you want to listen to the next 5.
I always like to say, man, that Joe Rogan school of how to cut up your podcast snippets. I think everybody should go to it. Go ahead and get you some long format, but put snippets out. Snippets are excellent. And I guess ending on the top of talking about what we were just delving into before we finish up, we do still want to know about your work in the film industry, what you're going to be doing, getting back into actually doing film and producing there, and how you're going to balance your work in your life with actually trying to go back into doing film.
Honestly, people are not going to like my answers. I'm actually in the process of starting and I know that it won't run right now, but starting the legal work for a small production company called Unpopular Productions, because I've been unpopular my entire life. Like I said, I have a rejection cast, but it's all good. And I recognize my space in that being unpopular is not always unfortunate, and I really enjoy it now. I enjoy it. I enjoy who I am. I enjoy that I'm quirky and somewhat awkward and sarcastic and all these things. And so I'm creating that space so that people can do that there too. And this is a very unpopular thing to say, and most things that I say are probably going to be unpopular.
I know, right?
Good company.
these these conversations were once upon a time unpopular. So, you know, having these Clubhouse conversations really, really, really poured so much hope into me. Like,
you're brave too. You're brave for doing it.
I recorded them and I was like, yo, you guys don't know how much I'm so excited to like hear you guys say that you guys want unity too. Like, I've been at this for a long time and I never get anyone that is as enthusiastic as they're just like, yeah, all right, girl, bye. Like, people don't even want to have that conversation. But the fact that people are like, yo, I have a project about unity too. Me too. I'm like, wait, what? Where were you? Like, what? Let's get together. Yeah. Like, let's do it. Like, let's get together right now. Let's do it. So I'm just like, it really excited me, and it put a lot of hope into me that this can be achieved, that unity could be achieved. And so that is one thing that I'm definitely doing, is that having larger conversations, you know, in bigger spaces with more people. And I think it's really, really important, before I get to that unpopular statement, I think it's really important to talk to everyday people. I think I used to have a program called Royal ID where I used to interview celebrities and like Christian artists and Christian hip hop artists and stuff like that. And that was great. But I really enjoy just regular people, because I think sometimes we get kind of boggled. And as a producer, you know, you got to bring the expert on. You got to get the expert that can talk about da-da-da-da-da-da. But it's just like, that's invalidating people who are still very much a part of this issue or conversation, even though they might not have stats and numbers and facts. Like, you know, and sometimes I would feel like that, like, dang, like, I don't really have the stats on that particular thing. Well, maybe I should look up. And then you feel like, man, well, I got to go and do all this study. And it's just like, I am the study, especially when it comes to this. Experience. Like, I'm the study, and I don't want to invalidate. I don't want people to feel like they can't enter a room, you know, because it can get like that in these clubhouses. Like, you get a lot of intellectuals who, I love intellectuals. I'm around them all the time. But I don't want people to feel like, well, I don't really know what to say because, you know, that person, they brought this to the table. What do you have to say about your experience? Because at the end of the day, people are you are the numbers, behind the facts. You are the number. So you are validate. I love to bring people to the table who feel like they don't have nothing to say. Like, I love doing that. So I just had to say that, like, I love interviewing everyday people, not just celebrities all the time. And so, look at me getting all excited, forgetting my point. The unpopular statement I was going to say is that rest is really important. I remember I burned out around, like,
talk about it.
I think when I was part-time, like around when I was part-time at the radio station before, and then I was also a grad student or something, or maybe even a little before that. But I was like, man, this whole don't get no sleep and grind, I don't think I'm about this. This don't work for me.
Don't get no sleep.
Because my mental was reaping havoc. Like, I felt it. Like, I was like, it's not good for my brain. Not just my body, but my brain is exhausted. And being an introvert / extrovert, I need space to just, like, blah. Like, don't think, don't speak, don't do nothing. Just let my brain breathe. And so it's so funny how now everybody's just like, make sure you get your rest, make sure you have a therapist. Make sure I've been on that, yo. Like, nah, I already knew this wasn't for me. So that's what I would say is rest. Put rest first. I put rest first, and I put relationships first. I think sometimes we put relationships to the wayside and think, no, we got to grind. And I've looked back on my life and be honest, especially recently, I'm like, man, maybe I should have been more focused on this, you know, in terms of percentages. Like, maybe I was focused on relationships a little too much. Like, maybe it should have been a little more, you know, 80-20 and stuff. You know, I'm looking at it like that. And then, you know, I'm reading this book that reminded me that relationships are super important. And I'm like, oh, you know what? No, I'm going to keep relationships first. Because at the end of the day, it's the work that we're doing is a reflection and for
that's the crazy part, yes.
It's for people. It's for people. And so if we're doing the work and always on social media and living our lives on social media, like, you know, I'm not trying to be mean, but like, if it was about the money, if I was really about the money, bro, I would be rich by now. I would have grinded, and I can go into that mode of hardworking. I would have grinded the mess out of every position that I had. I would have, you know, worked out every network. Like I don't subscribe to networking personally. Like make genuine relationships, and when it clicks, run with it. And when it don't, that's okay. Don't force it. Don't like, all right, who's going to be here at this event? This is exactly who I want to talk to. I mean, it's okay to be strategic. It's okay to be like, okay, I really would like to have a conversation with this person, but don't be like, all right, this person is going to be da-da-da. And then, it's interesting. Like I'm not going to say where, but I had that experience this summer at a production, and people were like, oh, I'm here to network because I want to meet da-da-da-da. And I was like, why are you here? And I was like, I'm here to work. It was crazy. I was like, everybody was saying it, bro. Everybody. I was like, I'm here to work. Like, I'm literally here to work. I'm here to work. And this is the perfect opportunity to reintroduce myself back into film production. You know what I'm saying? And I don't subscribe to networking. I do it in my own way. I guess people will argue like, yes, you do. You do it. You just do it differently.
It's organic.
I'm like, but I'm not thinking about it. You know what I'm saying? And I rest. And in terms of the question of balance, I rest and I make sure I put relationships first. And then that propels me to be able to do the work. So that's how I balance. And that's what I would advise other people especially trying to get into this business. But every filmmaker is probably shaking their head.
No.
She did not just say that.
No. Let's be like, creative work is energy work. And it doesn't matter if you feeding the body and sleeping the right amount. You got to do other stuff to recharge yourself, and you got nothing to put back out.
Very true.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So can I ask my question? I never asked it.
Of course.
I know we went all around the world. I'm so sorry, listeners. Welcome to Yore's Brain. This is where I be at.
Sounds familiar.
I'm so glad to be in good company, guys.
We tend to be a little bit sporadic.
So this is a heavy hitter. I asked this question Clubhouse as well. And I'm not even going to do that to you. I was going to say it's part 2. I'm not even going to do that to you. We can do it different. We can do it offline. But who do you think should be able to use the word or identify themselves as Black in America?
That's a good question.
Yeah, this is
man.
Yeah, so like
sip your tea. Sip your tea.
No, I'm playing. I'm waiting. I didn't mean sip tea as in
seen as negative.
I forgot that that's always associated with like gossip. Okay, I just meant I'll wait.
So like I don't know if you can tell, but I'm quite melanin deficient.
He said I'm quite melanin deficient.
Wow.
No, that was hilarious.
I'm so done with you, bro.
But my wife considers herself Black, but her grandmother is actually Cherokee. So she's about my complexion, but her features are, pretty African. And then we got a son who,
this is interesting.
This is another one of those things that gets a little weird for people, but like, I really believe in most cases, if the woman of the house is Black, that is a Black.
Nothing you can do about it. Nothing you can do about it.
That's funny.
And she's the oldest of 6 kids, and so we've had 1, 2, 3, 4. We had like 4 of her siblings living with us at different points in time. And I don't think walking into a job interview, my son would ever be mistaken for Black. But I'm not a fan of white culture. I don't know that white culture is actually
a good
thing.
Question. Yes, that's a good point.
Yep.
But like, that's
I hear you.
I got the ultimate privilege because I'm just inhabiting these atoms. They ain't even mine.
Yep.
I got to give them back in a little bit.
You didn't ask for it.
So like,
that's a good point. It's a hard one to think because.
Yeah.
Now, when you ask that question, are you thinking more of in like complexion wise or in like whether you consider yourself African American or Black?
Yeah.
The latter.
Okay.
But it's very interesting that you bring up the former.
Right.
I think that's really, really interesting. That's a whole other aspect.
Yeah, because the thing is, I think a lot of people don't. It's a cultural thing because technically you ain't Black, you ain't a color, right? That's what I tell people. Like, you aren't Black. Black refers to a culture that was created outside of Africa by the people in the diaspora, wherever they may be at. And that's how I see it as, as a person who part of the diaspora, I see it as a culture. That's why if you see a lot of Black folk, especially in media and whatnot, whenever they talk about Black nowadays, they've actually been replacing the word. If you've been paying attention to it over the past like 5 to 7 years with culture. So it's like, I'm doing it for the culture. This is about the culture. We're representing the culture. And what they're referring to is Blackness. That's what they're referring to as the culture. They aren't referring to a specific region, tribe, country, anything like that. They're just referring to a culture, and that can encompass anybody that feels that they're a part of that culture, which is interesting. And I do think some of it may have to deal with, like, in my opinion, some of it may be with your amount of melanation. But at the same time, you have people say you were raised by a Black family and you're not a melanated individual. What do you really consider yourself? You see what I'm saying? In my opinion, you're Black.
I was just going to say that to his. Yeah. I was just going to say to his point. But see what you see how we're saying, but you're Black. You know how
but that's an outside distinction. That's like saying, like, no matter what group you're a part of, you're always Black. It's
not a what's to say? That was good. It's not a phenotypical description or assessment, in my opinion. I don't think it has anything to do with phenotype.
So then when we say I'm Black and I'm proud,
you're saying that I'm a part of this culture. Like when James Brown was saying it, he was referring to a culture and the music that he was producing.
Now, hold on now. Let me stay here for a second.
Which culture was he saying? Which culture was he saying?
He was responding to the culture that was created out of those people that were a part of the diaspora. For his particular folks, it's folks from South, because he came from South Carolina. His people, quote unquote, because it's weird to call them African Americans now. It's weird, but
and how fast do white people drop Irish American, Italian American?
Point. Except for they drop it quickly and they become a part of white culture. It's a thing. It's called white culture.
Yeah,
I don't know that it actually is, though. I think there's an imperialist culture, and then there's like all these other people that think that they're outsiders. Like America is made up of a lot of people that think we're all outsiders.
That's what the funny thing is. This is hilarious.
That's funny.
But there's a culture connected to it.
Yeah,
that imperialism.
So I don't know how much time.
I mean, we have time. If you got time, I know. We are. Yeah, you got something to say. Please say it.
Got something to say.
Okay, real quick. Again, an unpopular thought, an unpopular opinion. And I am always ready to be corrected. I am always to say I am wrong. I am always ready to be debunked. I am not proud in any sense of the word. Like, you said what?
What is it? I'm here to get it right, not be right.
You know what I'm saying? So this is my opinion right now. This is how I feel. I feel like it is important to, as much as I am for unity all day, that is my mission. That is the whole point in my projects, in the student project. I turned it to the documentary and turned it to the short. Now it's a podcast and hopefully a feature film at your local theater. But like, that is the point. Unity. That is 100% the point. I do think, and which is beautiful because I hear this in the Clubhouse conversations, which is that, and I'll even say really quickly, some of the solutions that they said to bridging the gap is engaging one another more, intentionally doing that, educating each other about our background, about our history, about our struggle, so we know, and we can walk into spaces knowing like, oh, right, like this is why this is happening because X, Y, Z, and still acknowledging our differences. So acknowledging our similarities are high priority for me in bridging the gap. But that does not exclude looking at our differences. And so I think that it's really important for African Americans to have what they have, because our ancestors worked very hard to scrap up and create what we have that is now influencing the globe. So I do think when you're talking globally, I think it's perfectly fine to be like, okay, Black people. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But, for instance, in one of the Clubhouse conversations, someone said like, I asked the question, who can say Black? And then it pretty much came to anyone that is melanated. Because when you go to London and you say Black people, I guess,
Yep.
you know, they thinking
Yep.
about Black people in London.
Mhm.
So I was like, okay, that's a good point. I get it. But there is this shared experience that we have here in America
Yeah, it's
that
different.
others don't. There is a shared,
Good-
whether
'cause
good
there's
or
good
bad,
stuff.
not just always,
Yeah.
you know, bad, but just the good. Like, you know, like
Yep.
you already know what's going to happen at Thanksgiving. Like
Yep.
certain things that is our culture. There's certain things that are from us, and that is Black. And so I think that in the two part, that's why I was like, do we got time? The two part is,
Say it. Yeah,
oh
say
my
it.
gosh, I'm gonna say it.
Do it.
That's all right.
People gonna throw some stones at me.
No.
Yeah.
We in a space of understanding.
So I'm not gonna lie. I'm definitely like, should I really say this? I'm gonna do it though. I'm gonna do it. I'm a man. I'm a woman up. So I think that, and I'm perfectly fine with having conversation with people who feel otherwise. I think that Black History Month should be reserved for African Americans in this country, for the progress that's been made for Black people in America. If we want to have the conversation of like, hey, let's delegate the last day, or let's delegate the last week, or let's kind of delegate this one kind of selected moment where we can talk about other Black cultures in America that has contributed. And the reason I say that is because I very much think that our forefathers did that. And I'm going to get this wrong. I'm not a history buff. So for all my, you know, for the group that I was in,
HBCUs out here waiting to hear this.
We lived this stuff. We lived this, like, we literally had to learn our history. We had to learn this stuff, which is great because we needed that in Portland. Like, otherwise I wouldn't have known it outside of what my mom was sharing. But, you know, I believe it's James Weldon Johnson. I believe I know he has a brother. There's James and John, I think. And I think one wrote the song, Lift Up Your Voice and Sing. I believe the other one created Black History Week. It was a week that later got extended to the month. And I do think what they had in mind was, hey, in order to create and continue a pride in our people, we have to acknowledge the strides we've made. We have to acknowledge the good we have. And the we I'm talking about are the ones who have done the work and the ones who have come from that work. That's really important. And so I am not, it's not a point of excluding, but it's a point of making sure we preserve our history and we preserve what's been done here, because we've seen over and over again, they foresaw like, hey, if we don't preserve our history, they definitely gonna throw it out the window because they're already doing it. I'm sure they saw it happening all around them. And so it is not to say that we shouldn't think about, you know, of course, I'm not going to think of all the names now, but like certain people who are not directly from slaves, but were born and raised here in America. Maybe you're Nigerian, you came here, and then, you know, you're a descendant of that, and they're a history maker. I think there is a space for that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I do think just as much as other countries have Independence Days and they have moments where they're proud to be where they're from, we have to have that. And I think our ancestors were fighting for that. And so I think it should be preserved for that. And if this conversation came up at one of my jobs, and I was like, yeah, I kind of think maybe we can highlight a few people. That's cool. But
it's Black American History Month.
It's gotta, you know, only because we don't have, and people keep telling us we don't have, and we know we do. And so that's when I get frustrated. Like, but we do have, but we keep getting told that we don't. And now you're trying to take the little that we got. It's just like, I don't like that. I don't like that. So just as much as I'm excited on October 1st for Nigerian Independence Day, it's just as much as I'm like, all right, well, this is reserved for African Americans.
I think that's pretty simple. I will interject and say this because I know it was Carter G. Woodson who created Negro History Week. And that's the real.
Oh, yes.
No, but that's the point that was so important with that week, because it was called Negro History Week. It wasn't called Black History Week or Black History Month. It was Negro for a reason, because there's a quote that goes with it. It says, if a race has no history, it has no worthwhile tradition. It becomes a negligible factor in the thought of the world, and it stands in danger of being exterminated. The American Indian left no continuous
go.
record. He did not appreciate the value of tradition. Where is he today? This is where it gets crazy. And I know, but at the time they were thinking about, and then it also says the Hebrew keenly appreciated the value of tradition, as is attested by the Bible itself, in spite of worldwide persecution. Therefore, he is a great factor in our civilization. So like you said, the reason why it was created was to make sure you don't get
There's so
taken
much truth
out.
To that, yo.
You don't want to be erased.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not after all the hard work.
Yeah.
What?
That's crazy.
Not after all the hard work. Not after you've been stripped of what you were like. You were stripped of everything, and then you still came out and created something phenomenal, and now it's influencing the globe, and it's being called pop, and it's just slang, and it's just whatever. And it's like, y'all best recognize where that comes from. I tell black people all the time, we got to take our culture and treat it how other cultures do, where they literally, you have to pay to use their culture. Like, you can't just become no Japanese taiko drummer just out of nowhere. No, you have to go and follow the masters, go to the teachers, pay your dues, go through the proper processes. I did not know that.
It's creepy.
Interesting.
But it's because I remember David Banner made a good point on this. He says, if you don't value your culture, who else are you expecting to value it but you? You don't put a price tag on it. You give it out for free, i.e. freestyles and all this other stuff. You just go out here and blah, blah, blah out here with it, but you don't assign a value. And when you don't have any return from that, you can't wonder why you created that circumstance. And I agree that's more than certain why he created that.
Man.
It's not.
And
it's what everybody else got.
Too much. Like, we've been like, that's what we were doing. Like, why does it need to change per se? Like, you know what I mean? It's like, wait, what? Like, yes, the change needs to happen. Change 100% needs to happen, but you don't just throw everything. Like, no, come on now. Like, come on. I personally don't think that. Like I said, I've heard other arguments and I get the point. So maybe it's a conversation of like, all right, on this last week, we are now, you know what I'm saying? Because other folks have come here to this country and they have assimilated to the country and they have contributed. They 100% have. And so I'm not saying to neglect them. It's just like, that's not what the forefathers created this for. That's all I'm saying. So maybe we can think about some amendment there, on the last week or the last day or something, you know what I mean? But let's stay focused on what this was, the vision. The intent. Let's stay focused on the vision. You know what I'm saying?
Man, I'm telling you, man, this is a great conversation. I know we're about to get to that 2-hour mark. So I want to make sure that we get your information in that you let our folks know what you're working on, what we can look forward to seeing from you, and where can we find you at. And make sure you tell them about any cash apps, etc., that you got on out here so that they can follow up and help our sister out. Yes.
Where you want me to send this chat?
Pull it up, girl. Pull it up.
First and foremost, I would say you can probably, for this particular project, you can follow me at akatafilm.com. That's AKATAFILM at akatafilm.com. And, my podcast is there. The short film information is there. And anything else that comes out of that, when you subscribe to that, I'm always sending out newsletters and letting people know what's happening with that through that source. You can find me on my personal. I don't have any social media for the project just yet because this takes a lot of work, y'all. And y'all know that.
It's a lot of work making shit.
I'm going to be honest, right? It's a whole lot of work. And I could totally try and, do the whole social media stuff for this brand, but that wouldn't be wise to the very thing that I was talking about when it comes to rest. I'm not even going to stretch myself like that. So my personal Instagram is royal_ID, ROYAL_ID. That's Instagram, and then my name.
Hey, it's just there we go.
So Yore Otikizua.
Excellent. Yeah, please, let's get this up here. And then also, we got to do too. We got to make sure we get her the information so she can get that Hillman game, man, from Queen. Now, because you're gonna love it.
That's so funny because that's actually one of the things that I want to do. I want to start a game for this.
Yes, you do need to talk to her.
Talk to Tanisha. Because she's like building a group of people to do this. Like they got like
all over the country,
a little squad of game makers.
I would love to, and I already know the illustrator.
Oh wow! See, since you already, come on, we can get them in contact.
Let's go. I'm down for that. So the Cash App now. All right, let's not forget.
Oh, easy enough.
Yore. So $YORE YORE.
And we will make sure we get this information up. as well when we get everything ready for promotion and of the episode when it gets ready to come out. But any other questions, Mike, for our guest today?
Oh, I got so many things I want to talk to you about.
We're going to have to get back up. We're going to have a part two. We're going to have to get you back another time. Especially once you're getting to the point when you're ready to get the film out. Please contact us. Yeah, because I like this conversation. I mean, we're talking for 2 hours. Does not feel like we've been talking for 2 hours. No, that's good. That's not a bad thing. That's
There's just so many more ideas that I want to dig into with all of this. Deep. Like every time one of y'all says something,
and I want to learn. I'm not I always profess I am a student. I am forever a student. The day that I stop breathing is the day that I'm no longer a student. Like, I'm forever learning, forever evolving, and forever changing. So
excellent.
I want to learn from y'all too.
I'm going to get ready. I'm going to wrap up today. First of all, I want to thank our guest, Yore. I appreciate you being here with us, having this discussion on these very sensitive and delicate topics, and complicated as well. And of course, co-host Mike, thank you for having us on that backup with these good questions, giving us some good vibes, some good energies. Give him a shout out.
Try.
There we go. And then Kevin, of course, I know Skip's in the back listening, and I know he was happy about this. He was extremely hyped about this interview and us getting to actually speak to you. He put us on the podcast. He had us listening to the podcast for like the last month so that we would know it was going. No, seriously, it is no lie. Promote, because he was like, yo, this is interesting. It's very interesting. We had to have this conversation. I like this. We really got to talk to her about this. So,
yeah. He was talking about this back when we were first scoping out stuff.
I am honored. That's amazing. People have been reaching out to me left and right. I'm like, what? Like, can I come on your podcast?
Because this is an important topic because it deals with something that is it's an issue that affects everybody, but with the community of the diaspora of folks of African lineage, there's no reason. One of my favorite things is to see Steve Harvey going over and doing Family Feud in Africa. Right. And him talking, communicating with the people, and him telling them, yo, why are we not working together? Why do we not have stuff set up so that if I need some cement, I can holler at my man in Nigeria? The largest cement creator in the world is a Nigerian man. He is one of the top 50 richest people in the world. Yeah. Why do I want to have a connection to him if I'm a black business owner? I shouldn't be buying my concrete. Think about it. So yeah, they be building. And then to not know of the vast amounts of wealth and opportunity, the fact that I can go over there and go work. I don't have to stay here in the U.S. if I don't want to. There's options. It's something that we really do need to figure out how to break down, just so in the world we have a better world system, because it's not just for black folk, but for everybody. Like, why are we out here fighting each other? It's stupid. But yeah. And then as creatives as well, as creatives, there's really not much of a space to be a good creative and to hold hostility and anger towards different racial groups or ethnicities. It doesn't help you at all in creating positive products. So we enjoyed this conversation. We're going to have another one again, like I said. And I just want to say, for the Hilltop Glove podcast, I want everybody to have a great weekend. Have a good week. I want you to stay positive and upbeat. Say hello to all your neighbors. Tell them you love them, everybody that's close to you. And we will see you next time. Peace.
That's it for today's episode of the Hilltop Glove Podcast. Make sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and other platforms. Also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Hilltop Glove.